this one?
We decided to, just because we weren't doing the owl.
Oh, right. That makes sense. Okay.
Because I couldn't do both. So then we were like, oh, well, we'll just do the owl. But now I figured I'd stream. If no one wants to watch, they don't have to watch. But and shall we get started, Rusty?
Well, there's only 4 of us here. Or do we have more people on YouTube?
I can't look while I'm.
Okay.
So Becca, this might be a dumb question. So I know it's live streaming through YouTube, and then is it available on YouTube after the fact also? Okay.
Yeah. And then I'll copy that link and share it on our Facebook page.
Okay. So the folks that are, and I'm open to whatever, just throwing out the folks that are here is all the folks that were on earlier for the presentation, and then POCCS staff. And granted, I mean, we're just 2 minutes after 4, but I do wonder if no one comes on additional from the community, if we just go ahead and don't do this session.
Beck and I were talking about that earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. But who's Mary's? Is that Mary Sterling?
Probably, but Mary said that she was going to try to be
Yeah.
on.
Great.
Yes, I sent her the information. And we've got Carla. She joined us. She wasn't there this morning. Okay, what happened? I think Mary got bumped off. There she is. Okay. Well, where's Becca?
Sorry, I was trying to look at everything. Okay, so do we want to get?
Yeah,
do we want to
because we
get
might have
started?
other people join
Okay.
later.
Sounds good. Okay, so welcome everyone to our 15th annual community forum. Just a quick overview. Keep yourself muted if you're not talking, but if you have a question, we're small enough, you can unmute yourself and ask. If you don't like the video, you can turn your video on and off, and those options are in the left-hand corner of your screen. I'll be monitoring the chat box as well as on YouTube. So I might be a little delayed getting to that, but put your questions there if you don't want to speak out loud. You can also use the raise your hand option as well. So with that, I will pass it off to Rusty May.
Okay, thank you, Becca. So yeah, thank you for joining us. My name is Rusty May Squires. I'm the peer counselor here, been here doing this since 2013. Please accept our apologies for any tech issues. Becca and Kelly worked really hard to get this up and running, and after the forum, at the end, you'll have an opportunity to give us feedback. So I think we know where everybody's from already. So the purpose of the community forum, it provides an opportunity for consumers and community to learn about our services, changes, and updates here at Pend Oreille County Counseling Services. It also allows members to provide feedback and input about our services and how we can improve what we do, how we can better serve you. Counseling Services continually strives to improve the quality of our services despite COVID. We care about our consumers and appreciate their contributions towards our effort to improve the lives of our consumers. Our mission statement is making a difference with compassion, integrity, and hope, and we stand by that statement. So we have a lot of things to cover and a few presentations, so let's get started. First, we are having a raffle. If you want to enter, go ahead and put your name and contact information for Becca, and I'll also add my email if you want to email me your name. And if you want to email any feedback, if you don't want to put the feedback on this in a chat. So let me do that. Okay. So, Becca, you are up to present for prevention.
All righty. So a quick rundown of prevention. My name's Becca. I am the coalition coordinator for CUSIC. Pend Oreille County has three coalitions. We have Newport, which is ran by Beverly, CUSIC by myself, and Selkirk by our newest prevention coordinator, Elena. So prevention, our programs address and identify risk factors in Pend Oreille County strategic plan for substance abuse prevention, intervention, treatment, and aftercare services. We focus on youth and include parent and adult interaction and participation. Prevention consists of programs, activities, and science-based best practices focused on reducing underage alcohol, tobacco, and other drug access use in our county. We're still primarily on Zoom, but hoping due to COVID, we can get back into our communities, but we're still very much involved in our communities. There is still a lot of opportunities to work with each coalition. And to be a coalition member, or all your expertise are just either wanting to just be involved, support the youth. If you're a parent or you have lived experience and just kind of want to help make the community a better place, you can always contact one of the coalition coordinators, or you also can contact Carrie McKinley. She is our trustee leader for prevention. And you can always call 509-447-5651, which is Pend Oreille County Counseling Services, and ask for Carrie.
Okay, thank you, Becca. So Anna, you are up to talk about counseling services.
Thanks, Rusty May. Afternoon. For those who are new to this forum, and actually everybody knows me, so I'm not going to introduce myself. I'm just going to cover some real quick things that are happening at the local level and even at the state level. The diversity, equity, inclusion, we have a couple initiatives that are out there. The Pend Oreille County Health Coalition has an initiative that's just very specific to the youth. Counseling Services also has a initiative that's very specific to the LGBTQA. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at is putting together a couple of focus groups, and this will be in partnership with a couple other stakeholders in the community. One will be focused on youth, and the other will be with adults. We are getting some consultation to make sure that we can roll this out as culturally sensitive as possible. And these will be focus groups that can provide us some feedback on behavioral health needs, possibly even criminal justice and primary care health needs, very specific to the LGBTQA population. If you're interested, please let me know. Get a hold of, you can call me directly at the counseling services, or you can even get a hold of Rusty May with the email that she's sending out or sharing, and give me contact information. I'd be more than happy to follow up with you. Okay. At the state level, some may have heard about this, but the legislature recently passed or enacted House Bill 1310. This went into effect in May. And this legislation, the purpose was to basically address the excessive force and discriminatory policing concerns that have been put out there, and really kind of looking at moving more towards de-escalation tactics. Okay. So again, driven by good intent, but what we're finding is some unintended negative consequences, such as it appears to be inhibiting some law enforcement support that in the past has always been there for the behavioral health crisis response. So historically, law enforcement, our partners, would come with our crisis responders, especially if we were concerned that there might be some potential volatile situations going on. Now we're in a situation where it's possible that law enforcement might not go with the crisis responders. And that is presenting some challenging problems or concerns, and that we're not able to have the response that we used to have in the past. We'll just say it that way. This is across the entire state. And understandably, it's about interpreting the law. And so law enforcement right now, they're kind of in a place where it appears as if the law might actually create some personal liability, where they could be held personally accountable for criminal charges, civil trials, risk of suspension or decertification. So they're taking a very, very cautious approach to these situations. And so everybody's kind of waiting on pins and needles, asking for legal guidance from the legislator, from the attorney general. Just know that there's quite a few people that are very, very concerned, and the issues and the concerns are being pushed forward to the state level. If you have concerns about a response that you felt like wasn't happening or needed to happen differently, and we're fortunate that we have ombuds folks that are going to be in this meeting. They could be one forum to kind of address these concerns. Otherwise, we would also suggest that pushing this up to your legislators and letting them know this needs to be addressed. It's a system issue at this point. So there's really we can't point fingers. It's just an unintended consequence, but it needs to be remedied as soon as possible, because it really is kind of undermining some of the behavioral health supports that are needed in the community. Okay. Just wanted to give a quick update on we know it locally as the 1/10 treatment sales tax. For those who are following it, last year, Pend Oreille County passed this in September. And this is the treatment sale tax that allows the county to collect 1/10 sales tax. And that sales tax has to be used specifically for substance use or mental health new programs or therapeutic courts. And it's defined in statute. We actually been pursuing this for quite some time. I started this in 2008. So it's like a big historical, wow, we did this. And why it was so important is because there's these gaps that we were learning in our system. And everybody's just kind of looking at who's going to fill these gaps. And so many people were just, including us, were just sitting there kind of going, we don't have an answer to this. We need flexible funding. So the commissioners did pass the tax, and we've been collecting it, and we're looking at some initiatives. It also allowed us to pursue a Better Health Together criminal justice grant, and this was $350,000 plus change. This is very, very important because it's providing some seed dollars to really move forward with some of the initiatives that the county is interested in when it comes to the criminal justice, that overlap, that intersection. So we're looking at, can we get jail services on site in the jail, have care coordination? We already actually have been able to check a box off. When I say we, I'm not talking counseling services, I'm talking the county. So because this is a cross section of stakeholders working together on this. So the courts, they now have a hybrid position where they have a person who is serving as a mental health care coordinator. We're hoping that this will also provide the ability to kind of create some system data infrastructure, so we can just really get a sense from the data what truly are our needs, what are we doing, what needs to be done, and if what we're doing, is it actually working? Okay. The board, commissioners, I should say, also endorsed the creation of a mental health chemical dependency advisory committee. I've been calling it a council, but I was informed today the decision was to call it a committee. So new title change. This committee is going to serve in an advisory capacity regarding mental health and substance use issues in the county and help with that informing or recommending to the commissioners how the treatment sales tax dollars should be used. And so they would be part of the strategic planning, identifying performance measures, looking at other sustainable funding opportunities. And right now it's comprised of quite a few different and diverse kind of behavioral health stakeholders. And the committee is looking at having a seat that represents lived experiences. So we have an advertisement in the newspaper. There's also an advertisement. It's a volunteer position that's on the county website. And again, what we're looking for is someone with lived experience, whether it's yourself or if it's a family member, a resident of Pend Oreille County who really wants to learn more and be a champion about behavioral health needs in this county. If you're interested, please go to the county website. You can see the flyer there and download the application, or you can call Crystal Ziske, the clerk of the board. Her number is 509-447-4119, or certainly just get a hold of counseling services. We'd be more than happy to help you with that too. I'm thinking, am I missing anything? I'm trying to remember everything I talked about in the morning session. Does that sound about right? Okay. Any questions or thoughts? Again, this forum is really not just about us giving the public information, but it's really about trying to get feedback. Rest of me, I think you're on mute. It's one of our favorite sayings around here, right?
I could hear me talk. Thank you, Anna, for that. And Jennifer, you're up to talk about SUD and mental health, and then crisis.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm the clinical director with counseling services, kind of filling in as the crisis services manager as well while that position's open. We've had a lot of changes this year for all of our programs. For mental health and SUD, just to give kind of an overview, we do outpatient for both of those services for all age ranges. For mental health, we see primarily or really only Medicaid eligible folks. Whereas for SUD, because of other funding sources and grants, we are able to see some folks with other insurance or without Medicaid. We have just this week decided to return to telehealth only for our services for the time being, because we are experiencing quite a COVID surge in this region right now. So we don't have a time frame on how long that will be, but meant to be temporary. Throughout most of the year, we've been doing kind of a hybrid of some in-person, some telehealth for all of our outpatient services. Our SUD groups have been by Zoom ever since COVID started, and we've had a pretty good response there. Mary, did you have a question?
What is SUD?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's substance use disorders.
Okay.
Yes,
Thanks.
very good question. I always forget that our acronyms are not necessarily widely
Makes sense
known.
now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And that was kind of a shift because historically we use the term chemical dependency.
Mhm.
And in recent years, that's gone to substance use disorder. So that's what that is. So doing groups virtually, our attendance did drop some because of that. But especially recently, attendance has kind of picked up and participation has gotten better there. For mental health, we are contracting with some telehealth providers to help us fill some gaps because we've had some pretty significant workforce shortages over the last year, couple of years probably. And as a result, we've actually been without a med management provider for most of this year, but hopefully onboarding someone through the telehealth organization here within the next couple of months. And our services, fortunately, we have not had to put a stop or a hold on any of our services due to the telehealth or our workforce shortages. We're just providing them in a different way. So the kiddos at the school are still being seen, and we have a plan for making sure they still have services. Once we go to telehealth, we're still able to provide our intakes and assessments. UAs are still being done on site for the substance use folks. I think that mostly covers it for outpatient. For crisis, we've also had a workforce shortage crisis there, which actually resulted in us reducing our after hours coverage for several months out of this year, where we were only providing crisis response during the day. Fortunately, out of that came an opportunity to kind of revamp our whole crisis program. And so we're now set up with crisis responders who only do crisis work. So we don't have clinicians then doing double duty as a DCR designated crisis responder after hours. I see that Erica is on for this session. She's our newest crisis staff. She's our daytime designated crisis responder. And having that position filled, that frees up our clinicians during the day to really focus on seeing clients and managing their caseload, and leaves Erica to manage the crises that come in during the daytime hours. Gail?
It occurred to me when you were talking about clinicians also doing double duty as DCRs. Did you run into the instance where someone they actually were treating in therapy, they might have been called to that same individual in crisis? Was that another issue that might have arisen?
Yes, that was an issue. And there just was no way around it, really, except for having those frank conversations with clients, when they started, hey, I also work as a designated crisis responder. If you ever end up in crisis, I could be the one evaluating you or your family member. It definitely put us in, feel like there's probably a better word than awkward, but awkward is the word that's coming to mind. That it's just really kind of uncomfortable to work both of those roles with one client. Uncomfortable for them and for us, really. So fortunately,
good question though.
A very good question. Yeah. So I
We
feel
are
fortunate we're able to move away from that some.
And we are also quite hopeful that this is going to help with turnover rate. Historically, it's difficult to fill positions in rural. It's just part of the nature of rural sometimes. But I've been here for 20 some years, and consistently when we have lost a clinician, a master level clinician, it's generally tied to the crisis work. Not everybody resonates with doing crisis work. It is a very difficult and challenging type of work to do. So we are hopeful that, if we weren't in a unprecedented workforce shortage across the nation, I think we'd be looking at something different right now. We're hoping at some point that's going to get stabilized. And then what we'll see in the rural communities, our community in particular, is being able to retain folks who just really want to do counseling outpatient, not really touch the crisis if they can help it.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer and Anna. So now we're going to
just want to squeeze in there, because I'm not sure if I actually said it, that we are back to full coverage after hours now, and taking crisis response calls 24/7 again. want to plug that in there, make sure it got said. So,
Okay.
thank you.
All right.
Yeah, and that's huge. And I didn't do this in the morning session, but a large part of that was as Jennifer indicated, we got some additional funding. So our contract with the Behavioral Health Administrative Service Organization, Mary, you probably remember this as the RSN or the BHO. They did an outstanding job advocating for our county, rural counties in particular, but our county really just saying that we're at critical. Additional funding really needs to happen if you're going to keep some kind of sustainable crisis service in these more remote rural frontier areas.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So now we're on to our presentations. There's going to be 3. I'm going to do mine first, and then we have Amanda from NAMI, and then Gail and Kara from Spokane Ombudsman. They'll do their presentation. So for mine, Becca. For mine, last year I did a presentation on self-care during COVID. When I started prepping for this one, we were in the midst of opening up everything, no restrictions. We were going to get back to what we hoped was our normal. And then it shifted. And so I changed my name from Recovery After the Pandemic to Recovery Within the Pandemic. But the PowerPoint wasn't created to start a debate or take a position on either side. I just want to showcase the importance of self-care. So before I begin, I just want to say I'm not minimizing the overwhelming tragedies, trauma, and loss that COVID has had on people's lives. I just want to showcase the good things that happened. There were some pretty positive things that happened during COVID and are still happening. And then it's more about self-care, taking care of yourself before, during, and after. So next slide. Going to minimize this. So common feelings and behaviors experienced before, during, and after. And of course, we know we've already heard about the restrictions and mandates in place right now. So we're feeling all of these emotions. We've got mixed feelings about beliefs about COVID. There's lots of anger, confusion, trying to make sense of this new normal, increase of domestic violence and use of alcohol and other substances, and increased mental health concerns. That's a huge one. Next. So building a resilient recovery, resilience is probably the word of the year. We have to be that to deal with what's going on right now. And it's not just at the individual level, but every social tier, from family to community to the nation as a whole. And we know that in dark and distressing times, humankind can really pull through to show its good side. It's amazing what humans are capable of doing, showing their kindness and goodness during times like this. Next. So COVID turned our lives upside down. Some really positive things happened. We got creative. Distilleries used their resources to produce hand sanitizer instead of alcohol. Automakers made ventilators. We found creative ways to celebrate holidays, graduations, birthday parties, and weddings. Musicians provided concerts over virtual platforms, or their balcony or rooftops. And then a new appreciation of fun and fun activities and being outdoors. Puzzles and board games became cool again. Children and their parents are communicating as never before. For some, less screen time allowed for families to interact with each other. There was more time spent outdoors, hiking, camping, picnics, biking, unplugged in favor of nature. And people cooked more or learned to cook, including the kids. Next. So what we learned in the last 12 months and are continuing to learn, the importance of family, that we can adapt. We learned new skills, started new hobbies, got more creative. That unplugging from our phones, tablets was not such a bad thing, and being outside was a very good thing. The use of telehealth across healthcare systems. For some, this is great, others not so much. For us here at Counseling Services, it gave provided a lot of people the opportunity to be able to attend services with us calling them or with telehealth, because transportation is a big issue, and especially for people up north, they couldn't get here to see us in person. So it became a valuable asset. The importance of self-care. Washing our hands is vital to keeping germs at bay. We learned that this pandemic forced all of us humans on every level that changes have to take place today for a healthier tomorrow. Next. I loved reading the statements from kids. They're grateful for being with family and not going to take their health or loved ones for granted. They learn new hobbies, writing, making videos, and learning to cook. They realize that change happens and people adapt and become stronger. They also felt uncomfortable, sad, and weird. One 12-year-old last year said she described 2020 as unimaginable, unfathomable, and unforgettable. Some felt they matured, learned virtues of compassion, patience, hard work, selflessness, dedication, gratefulness, and a passion for one's profession and family. Some took to online learning to a whole new level and now want to do something to help make the world a better place. Next. The 5 and 6-year-olds spent a lot of time looking at how much fun they were having. And they were sad when centers closed so they couldn't do their activities like horseback riding, swimming, or gymnastics. One 5-year-old decided he was ready to get the vaccine so he could make new friends and go to stores with mommy and daddy. And one 11-year-old blamed the Avengers. They took the Infinity Stone, altered the flow of time, and turned the world upside down. I like that. I think that explains it all. Despite the hardships we have all endured and will continue to endure for some time, there are lessons to be learned from our pandemic experiences. Next. And lessons we can learn from COVID, it changed our life as we know it, and it changed us individually as we know it, from our morning routines to life goals and priorities. Telehealth and Zoom meetings, training platforms may become the new normal. We need to take mental health seriously. The rise in domestic violence, depression, isolation, grief over loss, increased substance use to COVID was staggering. So let's break the stigma. Community is essential. It's in our DNA to connect with other humans. COVID made us aware how much we need our family and friends. So some got very creative on how they stayed together, stayed connected. Next. So take care of yourself. Resiliency is based on compassion for ourselves as well as compassion for others. From Sharon Salzberg. Get your vitamin D. There's lots of food you can eat to boost your immune system and getting sunshine. And it's important during the months of October to March. That's when the sun isn't strong enough to get that vitamin D, where you have to supplement it with vitamins or other foods. Social media. Use your social media to promote positive and hopeful messages. Help others if you are able. It boosts our spirits and makes us feel good. Exercise, keep moving. I said before that housework is a form of exercise because you are moving a lot. Simple things like keeping routines, good hygiene, nutrition are needed for good mental health. And routine is a good way. If you had routines before and COVID just messed it up, try to get back as much as you can to get those routines back in place. Know when it's time to take a break. Good, healthy boundaries are needed to protect yourself and others. Count your blessings and be grateful. Connect with nature. Be less judgmental and more understanding. Enjoy life, discover yourself, and become healthier. And most of all, just breathe. Next. So what does SAMHSA, NAMI, and National Institute on Mental Health say about that? SAMHSA says tips for managing stress. Take time away from media reports to focus on things in your life that are going well and that you can control. Talk to family and friends. You can still stay connected while social distancing or physical distancing. Pay attention to your body. Recognize the early warning signs of stress and take the time to renew your spirit through meditation, prayer, and help others in need, whatever that looks like for you. Techniques, yoga, breathe, play with a pet, listen to music, take a walk are some examples. NAMI, is there a right way to worry about coronavirus? Acknowledge your anxiety, schedule worrying, reframe the situation, get moving, help others, physical distancing, not social distancing, mindful walking, breathing, and eating. It's just being aware of what's going on inside you during this and taking care of yourself. National Institute of Mental Health, a great way to handle stress with the acronym, be grateful, relaxation, exercise, acknowledge, be aware of many feelings and aspects as they accept them as they occur. Track your thinking. use your thinking to problem solve, to a lot of times we attach our thinking to things that cause us worry, and those aren't doing us any good. So use your thinking productively. Next. Just to note, the pandemic has forced us to rethink about how we live our lives. COVID has shown us how resilient and adaptable humans are as a society when forced to change. And I found this on Facebook in July. In the rush to return to normal, use this time to consider which parts of normal are worth rushing back to. Next. So here are some resources. Anna asked me to add a couple of resources. I'm going to type the information in the chat box because I didn't have any room to add to this. So during feedback, I'll type this information about the website she talked about that has a video called COVID-19, and Anna said it's a really helpful video, explains a lot of things on the behavioral health website. And then there's also, I believe she said this month is National Suicide Prevention Month. So I have a lifeline and a crisis text line that I'll type in there for you too as another resource. If you want this resource page or this PowerPoint, you can email me and I can just email it to you. Next. And these are just more references and resources to the PowerPoint. I believe I am done. So next we have Amanda from NAMI going to present her presentation. Hi, Amanda.
Hello. Just give Becca just a second to make me a co-host so I can share my screen, and then I will tell you a bit more about NAMI and the programs that we offer. I will say, if I say NAMI, a lot of people say NAMI. I asked someone once, is it NAMI or NAMI? And she just said, yep.
Either one.
Whichever way you say it, you're right. Alrighty, just move this so I can see everybody's faces. There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. I know some of you already know from this morning. My name is Amanda. I'm the Programs and Outreach Coordinator for NAMI Spokane. Really glad to be here and be able to talk about NAMI Spokane to more rural areas, because I know, there's not a local NAMI in that area, and we want to be able to meet the needs that are in all of our surrounding areas, including Pend Oreille. So let's talk a little bit more about what NAMI is. Because I know not everybody has heard of us. I certainly, before I started in this position in April, had not heard of NAMI before, and kind of came upon it when I was looking for mental health nonprofit work in the area. So NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are a grassroots nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the lives of individuals and families affected by mental health conditions. To do this, we focus on education, support, and advocacy to provide a voice for those affected by mental health and to help empower them to use their voice. We strive to end discrimination and overcome stigma, and we work towards these goals in large part through our programming. Our education programs, support groups, and advocacy are offered at no cost to participants and are all peer-led by someone who has walked the same path or a similar path. This allows our community members to have a safe space to share their experiences and to give and receive guidance on navigating a complex and increasingly seemingly complex mental health system. As I mentioned, at NAMI, we use a peer-based model. So this means all of our programs and support groups are peer-led. Everyone involved in our programming has personal lived experience with either their mental health, with the mental health of a loved one, or both. It is important, we like to note, that we're not psychiatrists or social workers or licensed mental health experts. Instead, we're experts in our own experiences with mental health conditions, and that is what we call the lived experience, which I know you've heard thrown out there a couple of times already. So not only do all of our facilitators and our presenters have their own lived experience, they also have to go through an application and state training process in order to run a program. Using this model helps us to create a safe, welcoming, and understanding place for participants to have open and honest discussions with others who understand what they're going through. Out of this peer-led model, we have an expectation of confidentiality. We expect our volunteers and our participants and our staff and everyone involved to maintain confidentiality, except for in cases where there's a safety concern. And this really just allows us to ensure that everyone feels comfortable and safe to talk about their experiences, especially when we're in a virtual space. And it makes it a lot easier to get emails and inquiries asking, you know, I'm working on my master's, can I shadow a support group, which would be a really great education, but in order to keep that confidentiality and make sure that the people in our groups and our courses feel safe and comfortable to share, we don't allow anybody to come in and observe. So that is another big part of our confidentiality. So I'll just get into the really important stuff, the programming that we offer at NAMI Spokane. All of our programming is currently virtual. We use Zoom, and we hope to be able to do some more in-person or hybrid programming in 2022, but we just don't have a concrete plan or date for that yet with how quickly things seem to be changing. As I mentioned earlier, our educational courses and support groups are offered at no cost to participants. Program participants must be 18 years or older. We do have one exception to that with our Ending the Silence for Students presentation, which I will talk about in another couple of slides. Let's first take a look at our educational courses. We have 3 different educational courses that we offer. The first is NAMI Basics, which is now being called NAMI Basics On Demand. It's a free 6-week course for parents, guardians, and other family caregivers who provide care for youth. And here youth means 22 years or younger who are experiencing mental health symptoms. This is a self-paced online course that gives caregivers the information and resources they need to be more effective caregivers and make the best decisions possible for their child's care. Also helps them to cope with the traumatic impact that mental health can have on the entire family while giving them a community of support. Our Family to Family class is a free 8-week course for family members, significant others, and friends of people with mental health conditions. This course facilitates better understanding of mental health conditions, coping skills, and treatment, and empowers participants to become advocates for their family members. This course is not self-paced like the NAMI Basics course. That is the only one that is self-paced. The NAMI Family to Family and peer-to-peer courses are both 8-week courses that meet once a week. And our peer-to-peer course, like I said, is very similar to our Family to Family course with that same 8-week structure. But this one instead is for adults with mental health conditions themselves. And it's designed to encourage growth, healing, and recovery among participants by offering a safe place to share their stories, learn and enhance their communication skills, set a vision and goals for the future of their recovery, and more. Like all of our programming, these educational courses help to develop skills and effective communication, create a safe place for participants to talk about their experiences and their goals for their recovery, and any successes or shortcomings that they feel they've had in their recovery in the past. If anybody is interested in doing a peer-to-peer class, we are working or being a participant to a peer-to-peer class, please send me an email. I'll put it in the chat when we're doing feedback. We are currently scheduling those, working on getting that scheduled. So if you want to be in that class, I would be happy to add you to our wait list and contact you with some more details. So those are our courses. So now we have, let's take a look at our support groups. We have 2 different types of support groups. We have our connection support group and our family support group. Our connection support group is really just our peer support group. They just made it extra confusing by using the word connections instead of peer. So our connection support group is a peer-led support group for any adult who has experienced symptoms of a mental health condition. In the support group, participants gain insight from hearing the challenges and successes of others, and the groups are led, again, by state-trained leaders who've been in similar situations. Our family support group is very similar. It is a peer-led support group. This one is for any adult with a loved one who has experienced symptoms of a mental health condition. And here, participants will gain insights from the challenges and successes of others facing similar experiences. We have 4 different support groups that we run every month. 3 of them are connection support groups, and 1 of them is a family support group. and we are continually trying to get more support groups on the calendar. Because we're in this virtual space, we do also have the ability to have participants enter support groups offered by local NAMI affiliates throughout the state of Washington. So I'll also share that link with you so that if the support group dates and times that we have on our calendar don't work for anyone, there are others throughout the state that they can access. So finally, we have our presentations that we give throughout the community. These presentations can be requested through our website or by emailing me. And the first one that we have is our In Our Own Voice presentation. This is a presentation for the general public to help promote awareness of mental health conditions and recovery. This presentation aims to change the attitudes, assumptions, and stereotypes about people with mental health conditions. This presentation includes two peer-trained facilitators telling their stories of living with their mental health conditions, from before they were diagnosed to working on recovery and any successes and shortcomings they feel they've had throughout that, and sharing to reduce stigma around the topic and showing that it is possible to live well with a mental health condition. Not only is it possible, but it's common to live well with a mental health condition. The other presentation that we offer is actually kind of a three-part presentation. Our Ending the Silence program encompasses three distinct presentation types. We have Ending the Silence for students. So that is the one that I said was our exception to the rule for 18 and under, because we do that presentation in middle and high schools. And that presentation is intended to teach youth about mental health, the warning signs of mental health conditions, talk about warning signs of suicide, and help to empower them to realize that they can help to end the stigma. We also have Ending the Silence for Families, which is designed for parents and guardians of middle and high school students, and Ending the Silence for Staff, designed for school staff of middle and high schools. Each presentation has two parts. We have a lead presenter who goes through an informative slideshow to talk about mental health, early warning signs, how to acknowledge these warning signs. And then we have a young adult presenter who does something really similar to our In Our Own Voice presentation and talks about their personal lived experience, their mental health journey. So now that I've given you a ton of information on all of the things that we offer, there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved if you're interested. You can take a course as a participant, attend a support group as a participant, consider requesting an Ending the Silence or In Our Own Voice presentation if you're connected to any schools or other community organizations that you think might benefit from it. And volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers to expand the programming that we can offer. We're always looking for people with lived experience, either with their own mental health conditions or with mental health conditions of loved ones, to apply and go through our training and be able to put on more programming and reach more of our communities. So that is the end of all of my fast talking information for NAMI Spokane. Anybody has any questions? I'm gonna stop sharing.
I have a question. And this might be kind of I don't know, maybe a dumb question, because
there's no dumb questions.
I mean, I know things like Al-Anon exist and NA and such, but do you have support groups like for families of individuals like co-occurring substance use and mental health disorders? So in NAMI Spokane, we have just kind of more general support groups. When we grow, we'll hopefully be able to get targeted and do some more specific support groups. The only specific support group that we have right now is one of our connections support groups is for youth specifically, over 18 youth, young adults, I should say. There are other affiliates, larger affiliates. I think Seattle might have some where they have specifically targeted support groups, and you will be able to find those with the link that I'm going to send to see all of those support groups. They'll be listed there. Cool. And I have another question. The ombuds, we get a lot of calls from family of folks who have been involuntarily detained and are really confused about the process.
does NAMI have any resources or guidebooks or anything for answering questions, FAQs, anything like that for that kind of situation?
We don't currently have anything comprehensive for that. It's something that we want to be able to grow to do and have those resources on hand, but it's just not something that we have right now. We only recently stopped being fully volunteer run. So we're kind of transitioning into getting all the process in place and figuring out how we can grow so that we can have those resources and offer some more targeted specific support groups and things like that.
Okay, cool.
So one day, hopefully.
Yeah.
One day soon, hopefully, I should say.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks for those questions. Those are really good. Well, I will pass it back over to, well, it looks like we lost Rusty May.
Becca, I'm guessing you're working tech issues with Rusty May. Actually, I have the agenda in front of me. So Gail, I believe Ombudsman is next up. Thank you, Amanda, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll just need to get
guys, the internet went down at the agency, so it kicked Jen and Rusty out. So they were
Oh, wow.
calling. Yeah. So
Murphy's
I'm
Law.
just gonna wait 1 minute, and they're gonna try to call in, so I can accept them into the waiting room. So I don't know though if you added Anna. I was just gonna say to is it Cara or Kara?
Kara.
So I do crisis response, and I talk to families when their loved one is involuntary detained, that about like kind of like how we could support them or how they could support their loved ones that were detained. So maybe just refer them to wherever, like the agency that detained them. Or if, you know, the person is seeking counseling, maybe their counselor could also give them some advice of how best to support them or what they can do while they're in there. Because I know it's kind of a rough time for not only the patient that was detained, but also the family.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Thank you.
Is it, so Amanda, does NAMI work with the consumer? I'm blocking on the title, but at the state level, there's an actual department, a consumer advocacy kind of department, very peer focused. And I would not be surprised if they didn't have pamphlets and things like that.
Yeah, that I have not been in communication with. It doesn't strike the name you said doesn't strike my memory. So
Office of
I would say we
Recovery
haven't.
Partnerships. Oh,
Right.
Oh, somebody's
Office
saying
of-
it.
Yeah, Office of Recovery Partnerships.
It was Office of Consumer Partnerships, but you know, that's not everybody wants to be labeled a consumer. And so recovery is the thrust of where we all are.
Yeah, well, I will take a look at that. Thank you for mentioning it.
Jen, is that you? I think we're just waiting for Rusty to come back in.
But we can move forward, right, Becca?
Yeah, so I'm gonna switch Kara to the host. So oh, there she is. I just can't admit when someone else is the host, so. Okay, let's.
Hello?
You're here.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Becca. Okay, that was weird.
You're on, yeah, you're on the whole Zoom. So we are moving on to
This is, I find this amusing because I think in another 2 to 3 years, we're going to go back and go, wow, I can't believe we were processing out loud all these glitches, and we're now experts at this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So is it the county then? Is everybody out or what? I just called Garrett. He didn't know anything about it. He's going to call Zach, who's up in the power room or whatever. to see what's going on.
Yeah,
Trustee May, I
it's
think
just you
it's
guys, but
just
we're
the county. So let's go
Yeah,
ahead and move
we're moving.
forward. Yep.
What's that?
Go, is it, Kara, would you like to go forward with the presentation? Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. My name's Kara Reedy. I am one of the behavioral health ombuds for the Spokane Regional Service Area. And I'm here with Gail.
Well, since we're introducing ourselves, and we don't always remember to do this, and I don't know why. And it's here on this slide, it talks about the change from where we were as a behavioral health organization, and prior to that, the Regional Support Network, which is when I joined the county. There's been so many changes since then. And then beginning in January of 2019, we became a fully integrated part of the behavioral healthcare system. And we are fortunate to have a very good working relationship with our Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization, which we call the BHASO. Still a lot of same familiar people there. Prior to that, I was, when I was with the RSN and the BHO, I managed our grievance system for all of our providers. When I first came, it was only Spokane County, and then we took on a bunch more counties. At one time, we had Okanagan and Grant, and then when Integrated Managed Care came, those counties moved over into North Central, and we have, and of course, we're glad we still get to work with Pend Oreille and some of our other rural providers, because we really have a soft spot for, and I grew up in a small town, not in this state, but in another state, and it's a whole different flavor. But I don't mind living where I'm at either, because of the technology it affords me. And I'd like Kara to just introduce herself and give a little bit of her background as well.
Sure. So I started in kind of the behavioral health world, working on the crisis hotline back in the RSN days when it was first call for help. After I graduated from Eastern, I worked for Spokane County Supportive Living Program, which is a program that assists individuals in the mental health system with finding and maintaining long-term housing. And it's a very client choice, client voice driven organization. It's very big on empowerment of individuals and advocacy and working among systems. So that's something that I learned I was really passionate about, and that I've continued on with it as an ombuds. And I think I mentioned this morning too, I also have family members who have been diagnosed with serious mental illness and who have been touched by the criminal justice and crisis system as well. So I have some personal stake in it as well. So I guess, yeah, we covered that slide. As Gail mentioned, the region that the Spokane Ombud serves is the Spokane Regional Service Area. So it's 6 counties, including Pend Oreille County. We try to work with the MCOs that are part of our region. They can be a good resource for us to refer individuals to when addressing sometimes complex questions about their care. So the main role of the behavioral health ombuds is to support individuals in expressing concerns about their services. We can't require specific actions from an agency. We're not here to require any personnel changes, personnel issues. Sometimes folks want that to happen, especially when they're really upset. That's not what our role is. Our role is to de-escalate, to use positive conflict resolution, investigate, advocate for, and assist with for individuals, and as a neutral third party. We provide a lot of education to individuals about their rights. Typically, those when someone enters into services, they should be given their rights, but not always. That's something that people process until the time comes that they have have an issue that they're dealing with. So we really push self-advocacy for individuals and teaching them, sometimes educating them about what their rights are and advocating that they can handle it themselves. That's ultimately the outcome we want to see. We can set up meetings if needed between providers and individuals, and teach conflict resolution skills when needed. And the goal is always to resolve those issues at the lowest level possible.
I would just like to make a mention too, when she was talking about education, folks about their rights. One thing that we've noticed is that when people, we had an uptick, that's the word I wanted to use, it's late in the day, an uptick in people who have been calling us from inpatient facilities, both substance use disorder, SUD, and psychiatric inpatient. But our calls sometimes have gone down from people who are enrolled in community-based mental health services or substance use disorder services because they're no longer in a facility. They're not going to a facility for their services. When you go into a facility, there's information about the ombuds, there's information about your rights. And it's kind of a reminder. And I don't, not having used telehealth as a therapeutic venue, I don't know how a therapist would get around that. You wouldn't necessarily have ombuds behind you on the wall as you're providing services, but just something to keep in mind, that it might be helpful to periodically remind somebody that that this is available to them, because it is hard to continue to remind somebody that they do have these rights. And so trying not to draw it out too long, but we also provide information referral to a lot of people that call us. It's not necessarily that they always have some issues that they want, a burning issue that they need to have discussed or resolved, but they also are looking sometimes for something entirely else they just didn't know. And sometimes we're the only one that's picked up the phone to answer their questions. And that's important. And we will call back with somebody if they need some follow-up, because we want to make sure that we gave them the right information. It's hard, as Kara was talking about, when we get calls from family members, we are person-driven. And we can't really speak to an agency on behalf of an individual without that individual's permission. Obvious, as we know, we've had extensive training in HIPAA, 42 CFR, et cetera. But parents don't always know that, and it's not always easy to get those answers to them. So we do what we can. We also make recommendations based on the trends that we see. We create reports. We are happy to give those out to community members. We assist people with creating a mental health events directive. And we also try to provide that individual voice to the Spokane BHASO.
So, and as Annabelle said earlier regarding House Bill 1310, I mentioned it this morning, if you have individuals who are affected by that, there's not a lot Gail and I can do to solve it, but we do track the calls that we get. We track issues, and that's part of our role to make recommendations and report on trends that we're seeing. So the more feedback that all of us can give the state about specific issues, I think the better. So feel free to give our number out. And these are all things here on this slide that are part of the WACs that mandate a behavioral health ombuds. So ombuds throughout the state are doing these as well. So if you get, I don't know how often this might happen, but somebody who might be from another region, you can always contact the ombuds from that region.
And I'd just like to add, so I think Annabelle, you were talking about it, or Anna, when, the law enforcement has played a role in helping to diffuse situations, now that the law enforcement is taking a hands-off approach, I think it's something that we're going to see. I think it's tragic that people have to get more and more sick before they can get the help they need to get better, to get the help they need to get back on the road to recovery. And it adds to the layers of trauma, especially if they end up being arrested for some reason because now they're really sick. So it's something that has to be fixed. It just adds layers of trauma to them and to the family. So that's once in a while I get on a soapbox, you'll have to get me off of it.
Well, and I do too, and that's part of like why we do the job that we do, to be really fired up about certain things. So we wanted to give an overview of some of the types of grievances that we work with, because it gives you a better sense of, you know, what we can assist with and what we do. We try to use individual voice, client voice as much as we can. So we try to have them identify if their grievance fits into these categories. I don't know, Gail, do you have more on that?
Well, I'd just like to say that, you know, you see the one on the top upper left or upper right that says dignity and respect. That is such a broad, you can almost tag that with every issue that comes to us, because people feel like they're not being respected. And it generally has some kind of a play. And we also know that access is something that right now with a workforce shortage, we might be seeing more of. There might, you know, people are calling us and saying, I need services. Can you help me get into services? No, we can't, but we can provide you information about how you might find services.
Mm-hmm.
Quality appropriateness, these are about, you know, issues of poor quality treatment. And services not provided maybe in the best practice, but, you know, that's something that we try to come to through the mediation process. Phone calls not returned, that is something that we do hear from folks, unfortunately. And also wanting to make sure that people are included in their treatment planning. I know in my heart that each one of the 8 of us that are on this call really believe that people's voice needs to be included. This is about their services, about their journey. But there are still some systems, and substance use disorders is one of them, that doesn't necessarily include their voice in their treatment planning, especially when they are required by law to go to that training by a judge. So I just wanted to say that, you know, these, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see too that there's some other things. If I can just touch on the physicians, ARNPs and medications, this is not, we don't go beyond our scope. Obviously, we are not a prescriber, but people call us because they feel like they're not being listened to. They feel like the medication they're on, the prescriber is not helping them with what it is that they want to get help with, and they're not listening. With maybe they only see them for 5 minutes a month, and that's not enough. They can also ask for a second opinion, and it's not necessarily so easy to get right now, but it is their right. We do try and offer options for people that, you know, and it's often we find that when people call us on the medications, it has to do while they are in inpatient treatment. Kara brought up this morning that we had a facility that the agency had switched to a different pharmacy supply company, and there was a hiccup in the supply, and people were not getting their prescribed mental health or their psychotropic medications, and they were suffering, and the facility was trying to work it out, but it just, we helped add that voice, and I think we had a total of 5.
Yeah, it was like we kind of worked as like a consolidated source of feedback for that agency. Like it was all happening all at once, and they were like, oh, this is a huge problem that we need to get resolved. And then also I just wanted to add really fast on crisis services. There's the stipulation on the slide here, like we can't affect the legal process of an involuntary detention. We can't have a grievance about an assessment or an evaluation, but we can assist with issues related to dignity and respect, or, you know, privacy issues, all those issues while someone is detained, but not the actual legal process. Anything else on the slide, Gil?
Nope.
So while when we work on a grievance, ultimately, you know, we'd hopefully see that it gets resolved to everyone's satisfaction. That's a conciliation. We unfortunately that doesn't always work that way, and things don't fit into nice clean boxes. Occasionally we get a non-agreement where the individual we're working with does not agree with the resolution maybe that the provider offered. You know, this is driven by client voice. It's not necessarily seen as a negative thing. It's just working with that person to understand the reasoning behind the resolution that was offered and some alternatives for them, so they feel like maybe their needs are going to get met in the way that they need it to be. Not pursued, like Gail mentioned, sometimes people just need to contact us to work through things. So sometimes they'll call us and get things off their chest, and maybe they wanted to do a grievance, but after thinking about it, processing it, talking to us, they decide not to, or they don't call us back. And again, it is, client choice, it's client driven. That's their choice. We'd like for them to call us back, but it doesn't always happen. Information referral. Sometimes issues are resolved just by referring that person to a service that's can better address their issue, educating them about their rights, educating them about resources. Oh, Rusty's back. I just admitted Rusty.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything?
Oh, she has the phone on.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
sorry about that.
Like I don't like hearing my own voice, so hearing it on repeat is like, oh no, that's like my worst nightmare. Anyway, Gail, is there anything else you wanted to add on information referral or other resolutions?
No, sometimes it's just the best way it is. And then I think I mentioned this morning, there's an other. Sometimes you just need that category that it's hard to classify, but we need to have a type of resolution so that we can track it in our data.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I need to, there we go.
So this is the individual. Remember that we said, and we keep repeating it, the individual drives the process. We are the neutral third party. We do, when somebody contacts us, once we have the signed release, we put their words in writing. We submit it to the agency on their behalf. They approve everything that we do. We don't submit anything unless they do give the okay, and then we keep them informed as all along the process. Conflict resolution is a learned skill, and if you feel like you don't have the power to do something about it, it's hard to ask for things to be different. And unfortunately, we have some folks that in our system of care that have been there for a long time that may have some learned helplessness or some imposed, the system has imposed that on them, particularly if they've been institutionalized for a long time. And it is a learned skill, but it's a sign of a healthy system when people are able to ask for a change. And if you don't know what is going to work better for somebody, you don't. And I remember back when I think I was still with the BHO, and I was at that time working with an agency. They were included in the reporting that they did to us. One of the things that I particularly remember is that a grievance that they reported about was that somebody said that their intake process was so long that it really felt, kind of felt defeating to the purpose. And it just was, and they had to repeat themselves. And so the resolution was, we had no idea. So they worked hard to make that change. And if that person hasn't spoken up, then they would not have made that change. So that's something that I like to remember to tell people sometimes. If you don't know what's not working, it's not going to get better.
This I'll just go over really quickly because we already went through grievances, but it's any expression of dissatisfaction typically is what we use the word grievance, issue, I can't think of the other word. We use those all interchangeably because
concern,
that's right. Because grievance sometimes can have kind of a loaded connotation and this is less so, I think, in the last year or so, but sometimes agencies are hesitant. Like the grievance thing is loaded. So
we also work with, I should throw this in, we also work with the MCOs. It's not as common in our 6-county region. Some MCOs are really responsive to us when we approach them, and some aren't so much. But if it has to do with a change in their benefit, we can help them understand it. We can help them with the appeal process if they need to, but it's not something that they can grieve. That is a change. And you used to be able to ask for an administrative hearing. Those things, that process has changed. If once there has been a decision made on a grievance, there is really no appeal unless you go to the payer. So they could grieve it to the payer, which is the MCO or the BHASO. We haven't really had anybody who disagreed that was on Medicare, because that system is, as many of you may know, Medicare is somewhat of a difficult system to process. But I just wanted to bring that up. So I'm sorry. We're like putting ourselves late into past the workday hours.
I had something else to say. Oh, MCOs, sometimes I'll refer people to them with like care coordination kind of issues, because ideally they're supposed to be handling that. I think different MCOs are different in that regard, but I do offer that to folks who call us with those kind of issues. So mental health advance directive is a legal document that you can create that and states your wishes for if you were to become disabled by going into crisis, by becoming psychotic,
before you get to incapacity, while you still have capacity, right?
Yeah, thank you. So this is where you can list wishes of if you were to have that happen, regarding like an agent who can make decisions for you, support your natural support system, medication preferences, who could pay your rent, take care of your pets, those other kinds of obligations. Mental health advance, it states in the law that it should be followed to the fullest extent possible. There are exceptions to that, and some providers don't look at it, and we found that that's an issue across the state. However, this last year, there's been new legislation that DCRs must attempt to ascertain if that person has a mental health advance directive. So it's going to be interesting for Gail and I to see if that gives us an uptick in cases, or if it's going to reduce cases because folks who have been detained are getting their needs met, where now frequently we get calls about concerns about medication, concerns about not being heard while someone is detained. It's pretty frequent. So the times when it might not be followed by a provider would be like if the things asked for in the mental health advance directive are out of scope of practice, if it's contrary to the terms of their detainment, if compliance would violate standards of care or endanger their life.
For example, if somebody had in their psychiatric advance directive that they don't want to be injected with Invega, I can think of one particular client that we work frequently with, and that's not an issue that they can say, I don't like that, and they can, but it's not going to change. It's not going to change that part of their treatment.
Gail or Kara, but another example of that would be, don't give me this type of medication because I have a history of adverse reactions. This works better for me. And that just helps the provider just shortcut. Let's not experiment. Nobody has to be a guinea pig. It's already been established that this medication works better for this client. So they can go right to considering that.
Oh, and you had a really good point this morning too of don't call this family member, call this other, that can be really helpful when someone's in a facility too.
So we've had, I just like to say we've had gobs of training on HIPAA, 42 CFR. I don't think you can ever become an expert in that. And the different layers of confidentiality, conflict resolution, trauma-informed care. And we talk regularly with other ombuds across the state and the state itself. So we try to stay up on trends and things, but if you ever have a question, please just give us a call. The email that's listed there is a confidential email. It goes into a confidential email box. We may not be able to respond necessarily, and our IS department hasn't figured it out yet, but we will encrypt. We will encrypt our email and we will walk somebody through the process, because to us, privacy is everything.
Yep.
And we can Zoom and Team if you want.
Yeah, I was going to say we have that, so we can facilitate meetings. We've done that before, for meetings between individuals and their providers.
Thank you for indulging us. It's kind of hard to get through some of that stuff, but I think it's important to know that this is what we do.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Amanda, thank you for the presentation. I'm sorry I got kicked off. Several of us got kicked off. Did you think that we abandoned you? Then it took forever to get the internet back on, but then we're at the mercy of the internet. So it goes with the flow, goes with the territory. So this is open for feedback. We don't have Carla or Erica. We lost, I saw Erica in the hall, and then that's when I realized it wasn't just me, because I thought it was just me, my computer going down. So. Anybody?
Rusty May, so feedback regarding, I don't want to jump the gun or hijack what you're trying to do here. So are we talking feedback about anything that has to do with behavioral health concerns? We really want to know what's going on in the community. We only have certain channels. And so unless people actually tell us what's going on, it's pretty hard to get a sense of it. And people have a tendency, you have to be pretty irritable sometimes before you say, I'm going to go tell somebody.
Mhm.
And yet there's other needs out there. We don't necessarily can't always address everything, but we want to know, because you never know where the tipping point is.
Mhm.
And you never know where the resources all of a sudden come online.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant, Anna, is, I mean, we know that transportation is a big thing in this area. Childcare is a big thing in this area. For SUD, sober living we would love to have that here in this area. So there are a lot of resources that we don't have that we would love to have in rural America.
And again, when we hear about it, though, there might be opportunities to leverage, create a collaboration with initiatives locally, or we can push the concerns and needs up and say, where's the funding? Where's the support?
Yeah.
We're also looking for feedback for the community forum too. So right now I'm probably picking on Mary, and you don't have to answer right now, but anybody who maybe reviews this recording later, if you can just let Rusty May know, she'll get it back to the folks who need to know just what would make this forum more relevant. Again, we don't want this to be just us giving presentations, putting information out. We do want it to be something where, hey, I actually want to go to this community forum and hear what's going on and speak my mind.
That's what it's for.
I didn't know really much about the Ombuds program, and that was very good to hear what's going on in that world too. So thank you.
And I want to just back that up. With Ombuds, we've been fortunate. We haven't had too many cases, but I can say that when we've had cases, it has always been a positive experience. I can't speak for all providers, but for our agency, the Ombuds has been a resource.
Okay.
It's provided a different perspective, a third-party perspective to come in. And there have been times where we can't advocate for the client. It's a conflict of interest for us. But Ombuds has been able to do that.
Mm-hmm. So to be clear, these services, you need to be a Washington resident? Or what happens if you're homeless?
If you're a
Personally, we work with homeless also, but if you're calling us from Idaho, we really have no ability to work with somebody who currently resides in Idaho unless they're talking about a Washington service that they had sometime in the past.
We do, and we have had clients, that go back and forth. So we have had folks who live in Idaho who received services in Washington that we've assisted with. And there might be a behavioral health ombuds in Idaho. I have no idea. Certain programs are a nationally thing, like the long-term care ombudsman is a national thing, but as behavioral health, I don't know if there is one.
It would still be good information. So I would still say, hey, go contact the ombuds. Ombuds can direct, whether they can address it directly or they can, hand off to who can better address. And then, because generally what's going to happen, especially if you're homeless, it's probably going to be that intersection with crisis services. So we're a border county. We do get a lot of people that come over from Idaho. We never know if there's presumptive eligibility. I would say in the last 2 months when I actually went out and did a call, the person was from Idaho, but they were homeless, couch surfing. And once they realized I want services, it's like, well, I'm just going to say I'm a Washington resident. Well, they're homeless, so they can say that.
Yeah. And yeah, if you have questions, just always feel free to call us regardless of where you're at, because we will do our best to answer them.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's all we have on our agenda.
All right.
You didn't ask the stigma question. Are we kind of
Well, I
tabling
did,
that?
well, no, because, okay, Mary, you're the one. So I've already asked this question before, but the question I asked was, we all have to deal with this, and it's always there, but, and you can share if you want, what are some things that we can do to break the stigma of mental health? And I say it's important to talk about it. A lot of people are afraid to talk about it, but it's really important to talk about it. It's okay to talk about it.
I would say that same thing for substance use disorder as well.
Yes.
Because that is also a big stigma about, especially with, things, it's not a weakness.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I have an answer for you, but I have an experience of just over this past year in working with people in employment and training programs, and particularly youth. I think they've been very upfront about their feelings, and maybe that's an upside of COVID. I mean, that they're depressed or that they're anxious, and the state of the world is really concerning, and so maybe just the mere being willing to express that is helping to eliminate some of the stigma.
Yeah, at NAMI, we try to use education and talking about it, and we try to use education through people telling their personal stories, in addition to, facts and figures in terms of education, but really sharing those stories and talking about it and being open and honest, I think, is such a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no comments on YouTube, so
Okay.
I think a wrap.
I am putting in the information for the Department of Health emergencies, the COVID video, and also Washington Listens was on my PowerPoint, but I'm going to add the phone number on this here anyway. That's a really good place to call for concerns about COVID. And also
that was something the state, so to qualify that, the state established Washington Listens specifically for COVID.
Okay.
So it's so you can certainly contact, some folks are going to contact local resources, and we would be one of those local resources. And then other folks are just say, it's kind of awkward for me. I want to keep as much space around me as possible, possibly because of that stigma and just that privacy. But I still need to talk to someone. And so Washington Listens is one of those resources. Just to qualify, the video you're talking about, Rusty May, is actually a podcast series. It's on the Washington Department of Health. And it's been some pretty good stuff. I've listened to a couple of those podcasts. It just kind of circles back to what you were talking about, Rusty May, about how right now how our brain kind of works and this chronic stress. And if you're not a trained Navy SEAL, our brain has a tendency to say, hey, I'm not thinking as well right now. I can't tell you how many times I've kind of, the last couple of months where I'm like, do I have early onset dementia? What the heck is going on? It's just stress. Okay. So kind of normalizing, it's stress. Also that heightened reactivity. I mean, I would think most of us could probably raise our hands and say, boy, it's amazing just how people can't have an opinion nowadays without somebody just getting really upset.
Yeah.
It is pretty much toxic to go on social media right now. It's amazing how mean-spirited it can get. Some of that is really just this chronic place that we're in right now. And so just kind of touching back with what Rusty May had presented, and it was a very good presentation, Rusty May,
Thank you.
about acknowledging our feelings, about focusing on what we can control, and really being kind to ourselves and intentionally being kind to others, because it's so easy to see the negative, to see negative attribution, as they say.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I want to thank our presenters. I learned some stuff. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I picked up some new stuff. I'm kind of like, oh, okay, good to know. I was writing things down. So I really appreciate your time. I know this is not easy to carve out time. And I want to thank Rusty May and Becca. You guys did a great job with putting this together and managing the tech. And if Garrett's in the background, thank you to Garrett too. He's our county IT guy.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all for coming and presenting and joining. That's great. So
Thank you for having us.
are we ending then? Is there anything more that anybody wants to share, talk about? No? All right.
Just tell Mary that she should better put her name in if she wants to be in the
Oh
draw.
yeah, I'm sorry, Mary. Oh, did I say it in the beginning? Because then I left and then I didn't remember if I said anything. I mean,
So
got kicked off
I have to put my name in where?
in the chat box.
Oh,
You can put it directly to Rusty May or
Yeah, you
Becca if
can.
you
You
want.
can email it to me if you want. You still have my
I'm
email?
really new at all this stuff. So do I go to everyone here? Or
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well,
I'll email it to you.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, you've got my email. I emailed you.
Okay.
So that's fine. All right.
Yeah, I want to
Okay.
figure out how to put a tropical background like you have on your screen.
I think it's actually on the Zoom program itself. That's how I did it. Yeah. And there's
Yeah, it's
only
under
2 or 3. There's not very many to choose from.
Yeah.
You can add your own though. That's how I got mine.
Oh,
that's what I've done. Yeah.
I've literally taken a picture of my office when it was kind of clean, and it's my Zoom background.
I
love
that. That's the way to do it.
I like the blurred so you can't see anything in the back.
Mhm.